A Gold Award project is the highest award you can earn in Girl Scouting, and to do it, you have to come up with your own program and present it and make it last. So I'd like you to sit back and relax and enjoy the Herstory project.
Just you. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good, but I'm getting really nervous about this project. My grades are starting to slip, and my mom's going to be so mad if I'm failing anything.
Me too. Have you thought about who you're going to do your project about?
No, there's so many different women in history. How am I supposed to pick just one?
Well, let's look at the list Mr. Jensen gave us. There's Betsy Ross, Rosa Parks, Oprah Winfrey.
Other people have already picked all of those. Just skip to the end.
How about Juliette Low?
Juliette Low? Who is that?
No clue. You know, I wish she would just pop up and tell us about herself.
Well, if you want to know who Juliette Low is, why don't you just ask her yourself?
Who are you?
I'm Juliette.
What?
Juliette Low, the founder of Girl Scouts?
Okay, this is strange. Didn't you just wish for this to happen?
Yeah, I did.
Well, I wish unicorns really existed.
No, it doesn't work that way. I didn't come all this way through time and space to hear you talk about unicorns. This is important.
Important?
It's just a history project.
But it's not. If this project goes well, you two will go on to make one of the biggest archaeological discoveries of your lifetime.
But I want to be a dancer, not an archaeologist.
And I want to teach math.
Well, we'll see about that. Well, if you want to do well on this project, you should start your research.
Well, I guess you're here now. Why don't we ask you?
Well, that's what I'm here for, isn't it? I was born on Halloween in 1860 in Savannah, Georgia. I was named after my grandmother, so when we moved in with her, I was given the nickname Daisy. I was definitely not the typical girl in my society back then. Girls were expected to do things like painting and drawing and learning to play the piano, which I enjoyed. But I also liked things like hiking and playing tennis. I struggled greatly with who I was expected to be. I was expected to get married, which I did, but it didn't work out. Divorce was very uncommon and frowned upon in my day, and it took a very long time. So long, in fact, that my husband died before we could get it finalized. And after that, I decided to travel the world.
Really? Where did you go?
Let's see, Italy, France, Egypt, India. I had a grand old time, but I still felt that something was missing. I needed to do something important with my life. And that's when I met Robert Baden-Powell. He and I became friends soon after we met, and he told me about Boy Scouts, which was an organization created to prepare boys for the military, but in a fun way. I really liked this idea, and I thought girls should have an organization just like it. So Robert and I created the Girl Scouts. The first troop was led by Robert's sister, and the first members were girls who sometimes participated in the Boy Scouts activities. We made an effort to stress things like spending time outdoors and being independent, things that girls weren't learning at that time.
Annie, are you getting all this? That's really interesting. How did Girl Scouting get to America? My sister is a Girl Scout.
Well, I started to notice that the girls' self-esteem was improving, and when I realized this, I wanted to share it with girls in my hometown, so I started a troop in Savannah. 18 girls enrolled in my first troop, and we made sure that we did things like camping and hiking and teaching the girls how to take care of themselves. I felt that was very, very important.
Wow. Did you ever think Girl Scouting would get so big?
Well, I hoped it would when people found out about it, but I never thought that there would be nearly 3 million Girl Scouts in the U.S. alone.
That's really admirable, Juliette.
I think so too. I love your story, and I don't mean to be rude, But don't you think we should research some other people before we decide who our project should be about? You say this is so important, so shouldn't we be really certain?
I suppose you're right. Who else is on your list?
How about Eleanor Roosevelt?
Eleanor Roosevelt, huh? Eleanor, this is Lydia and Annie. Lydia, Annie, this is Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, these the girls you told me about?
Yes.
How does she know what's going on?
Oh, Mrs. Low thought you might ask about me, so she asked if I would come along and tell you a bit about my life. Tea! Oh, I haven't had tea in decades. Your tea is famous, Juliette.
Well, why don't you tell us about yourself, Eleanor?
Alrighty. Well, I was born in New York City, and when I was only 10, my parents died. And so my relatives sent me to England to go to boarding school.
Wow, that's a long way when you're only 10.
Well, it wasn't uncommon for girls to go away to boarding school at that age and that day. But thank you. After my schooling, I met Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR, you might know him as. We got married and had 6 wonderful children. He was very involved in politics, and about soon after we were married, World War I began. And I felt I had to do something helpful, so I joined the Red Cross and volunteered at the local Navy hospitals.
Weren't you involved in politics before Mr. Roosevelt's presidency?
Oh, Annie, you know more about history than you're letting on, dear, yes. But that was after Franklin contracted polio.
What's polio?
Polio is a disease that causes paralysis. Mr. Roosevelt could not move his legs for a very long time.
Yes, he thought his political career was over when he became wheelchair-bound. But I knew he'd never be happy if he quit. So I went and I gave speeches, and I appeared at campaign events in his place while he regained his strength. And he gained much of it back, and he jumped right back into the political race. And in 1933, Franklin was elected President of the United States, and I became First Lady. Some people say I changed what it meant to be First Lady, but I just wanted to help make America a better place.
How?
Well, it was different than other First Ladies. I took an active role. I gave speeches, I spoke on the radio, and I even had my daily newspaper column called My Tag. And I traveled extensively. You see, I was Franklin's eyes and ears, as I had legs. And I visited our troops in World War II.
That's really amazing. What did you do after Mr. Roosevelt's presidency?
Oh, yes. Well, Franklin died in office, you know. And I thought I'd just go back to Valkill and Hyde Park, not far from here, and enjoy my grandchildren. But President Harry Truman had other ideas. He came to me and convinced me to be the first delegate to the newly formed United Nations. It was an organization that we had gotten together to get all of the nations to try to keep peace in the world. You see, we've just had 2 devastating world wars, and millions of people had died. We had to do something. And I traveled around to gain support for the United Nations in many countries who felt it might not be so important to them.
What would you say the biggest accomplishment in your life was?
Good question, Lydia.
Well, I believe that it takes courage and strength to do something that's fearful for you, and you must do the thing that you think you cannot do. So I guess for me, my greatest accomplishment would be chairing the committee for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
What is that?
Well, it's kind of like our own Bill of Rights, you see. We had all of these different countries with so many different cultures and value systems, and we had to come up with a way and a set of agreed rules that every human being should be treated.
Wow, that's really cool.
That's incredible. Everyone in the world is affected by something that you did.
Well, I didn't do it alone, my dear. Yeah. Thank you, Juliette. The tea was lovely.
Most welcome.
I must be going.
Well, thank you for coming. Your story is amazing.
Who's next?
Don't be greedy, Lydia. We've already met two amazing women. How could we expect another?
Oh, don't worry, Annie. I've an idea. You see, Juliette and I made great changes in our times, and I know that you and Lydia will be making great changes in yours. But we'd be nowheres without Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony, you asked her to come?
Yes, I did, and she should be coming any moment. So we must be going. We can't have too many time travelers in one place. Something cataclysmic might happen. So nice meeting you, girls.
Goodbye.
Susan B. Anthony, huh? The name rings a bell.
As it should. Susan B. Anthony changed what it meant to be an American woman.
Well, thank you, Juliette, but you know it's really not that simple.
Susan, Eleanor told us you'd be here. What a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Hello, I'm Susan B. Anthony.
Hi, I'm Lydia, and this is my friend Annie.
Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yes, I think we should get right to it, shouldn't we? Okay. I was born in 1820 in Massachusetts, but I didn't discover my true calling until the 1840s when I moved to Rochester, New York. Even though it was years before the Civil War, I became very impatient about the cause to free the slaves. I joined several abolitionist groups, and we tried so hard to help those poor people. About the same time, I also got very interested in the temperance movement.
What's temperance?
It's a cause to change the way society uses and abuses alcohol. Alcohol abuse was a very big problem in my day.
Wow, you were trying to change many things.
Oh, and she worked very hard for those causes as well.
Yes, indeed, we did. With my friend Elizabeth Cady, we founded the Women's New York Temperance Society. And then would you believe, at one of their meetings, I was told I couldn't speak in front of the group because I was a woman?
They told you you couldn't speak in front of a group you founded?
That's crazy.
Well, you can bet it angered me as well. There wasn't a single man in that room who could have said anything more intelligent or more important than I. After a while, though, we began to realize how widespread this problem was and determined something had to be done. So with our friend Lucy Stone, we founded the National American Women's Suffrage Association.
What is suffrage?
Suffrage is the right to vote.
That is correct. Now, the Suffrage Association was able to bring together many different women's rights groups to fight not just for the right to vote, but the right to own property in our own names, the right to have any degree of control over our own lives.
Well, how did you do it?
Well, first of all, we gathered together all of the most educated and influential people that we could find to support our cause. And then we put on many events, including conventions, to try to raise public awareness. And what most importantly, we published the Declaration of Sentiments, which was similar to the American Declaration of Independence, except this set forth the reason why women should have the same rights as men. It was published in all the papers, and soon most of America was well aware of the women's rights movement.
Well, how did people react?
As you might imagine, not everyone agreed with what we had to say, but we thought it was a big step forward to just have people talking about it.
Well, we all know that women got the right to vote. So how did you do it?
I didn't.
What?
Women did not get the right to vote in this country until 1920 with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Unfortunately, I died 14 years before that, so I never had the opportunity to cast a ballot in an election.
That's so sad.
Oh, I don't really think so. Yes, it took a long time, and yes, I didn't live to see my cause succeed. But the law did get changed, and now when you girls turn 18, you will be able to vote. And I think that's what's really important, don't you?
Very well put, Susan. I'll bet this gives you lots to think about, girls.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
The pleasure was all mine. Now, are there more visitors coming?
Yes, I believe we have one more visitor coming today.
Well, then I'll be running along. And I do hope that you girls find the perfect woman to write about.
Thank you.
That was really interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I'm glad you think so, but don't get too comfortable because someone else should be coming through any second now.
Who?
Her name is Dorothea Dix.
I feel kind of silly. Every time you mention one of these women, I have no idea who you're talking about.
Well, that's why we've come, to teach you.
That's right. Hello, girls.
Hello, Miss Dix.
You must be Lydia and Annie. Thank you so much for inviting me, Juliette. It was very kind of you.
It was my pleasure. Won't you sit down?
Why, yes, indeed. I was just thinking, enough chat, let's get to work. And I'll have some tea, thank you. I was born in 1802 in Maine. I started teaching school, thank you. I started teaching school when I was just 14 years old. By the time I was 18, I had founded the Dix Mansion, a school for young ladies, as well as a school that was free for underprivileged girls to attend. Around that time, I started writing textbooks as well.
That's a huge impact. You must be a genius.
Well, thank you. But the turning point of my life was when I started teaching religious classes in a women's prison. I found that many of the women there were mentally ill. This was wrong. It was harmful to the women with mental illness and dangerous to the other prisoners. I knew there had to be a change, so I went to the courthouse and asked for improvements to the jail. They made a few small changes, like adding heat in the winter, but there was so much more work to be done.
So what did you do?
Well, I traveled all over the country to find out what people in prison needed and to see how people with mental illness were treated. I found they were treated inhumanely. They were chained up and beaten and horrible. I decided what we needed were special places where people with mental illness could get treatment and help and care. I called them mental hospitals. So I went to Congress and asked for 12 million acres of land.
Is that a lot?
Well, it's 60 times the size of New York City.
That's a lot to ask.
Well, it was, but when you think of how big the problem was, well, it really wasn't.
Well, what did they say?
Congress passed the law, but then the president vetoed it, so I never did get any land.
What? That stinks.
Yes, it did. It was very discouraging. I felt that no one cared about the cause of people with mental illness that was so important to me. So I went to Europe for a while to get away. But even there, I continued my passion for community service. I worked hard to make people in other countries as well aware of the needs of people with mental illness. I even convinced the Pope to build a new mental hospital.
Wow.
Well, around that time, the Civil War was breaking out, so I went back to the United States and volunteered wherever I could. Eventually, I was made superintendent of the Union Army nurses. I collected all the medical supplies I could, and I recruited the best nurses to take care of our brave soldiers.
What was that like?
Well, I was very strict with the women I commissioned. They had to be at least 30 years old, and I made them wear the very plain uniforms so no one would be concerned about their looks, and they could concentrate on taking good care of the soldiers. Some people said I was not the best fit for that job, but I did my best to help my nurses provide good care for the wounded soldiers, both our Union soldiers and the Confederate prisoners of war.
My father was an officer in the Confederate Army. It was very comforting to know that if he had been injured and captured, he would have been well cared for.
Thank you. After the war, I went back to my work on behalf of the mentally ill. Even when I became old and sick, I wrote letters. I still tried to spread the word. When you believe in a cause as strongly as I did, you will do anything you can for as long as you can.
Well, thank you for speaking with us today. Your story is so inspiring.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I loved speaking with you girls, but I must be going.
Goodbye, Dorothea.
no one cared about the cause of the mentally ill.
Yeah, I hope I can be as hardworking as Dorothea when I'm older.
And you will be if you do well on your project.
No pressure.
Well, Dorothea was our last guest of the day.
Our last one, but we're having so much fun.
Yeah, couldn't we just chat with historical figures forever?
No, unfortunately, we can't stay forever.
And I guess we have to make a decision.
Hi, girls. I was just wondering if you needed any. Oh, hello. Who are you?
Mom, this is,
I'm a historian. I'm here to help the girls with their project.
Oh, wow. You girls are really invested in your project. Well, I just thought I would suggest Sarah Wakeman to you two.
Sarah Wakeman. Who's that?
She's an ancestor of yours. You should look her up.
Okay, well.
All right. Well, let me know if you need anything.
Sarah Wakeman, huh? I wonder.
Sorry, girls, I don't know anything about her. Looks like just regular research for you.
Not quite.
Hello, ladies. I've come to talk to you. I heard your mom, and I wanted to let you know I'm Sarah Wakeman.
Well, hello, Sarah. My name is Juliette, and this is Lydia and Annie. I'm here to help them with their project.
That's a wonderful thing. Well, I suppose you want me to tell you about myself.
Yes, please.
I was born in 1843 in Bainbridge, New York.
Bainbridge? I live in Bainbridge. That's so cool.
I didn't realize I was so close to home. I died and I was buried down south in the state of Louisiana. Oh, well, anyway, I left home when I was 19 years old. My father was deep in debt and we were in desperate need of money. So I went to get me a job. Now, in my time, women did not get jobs that would pay enough for us to get by. So I decided to cut my hair, dress in men's clothes, and get a job on a boat on the Shenango Canal. Not long after I started working at that job, an Army officer came by and he said if I was to join the forces, I would be paid $152. Now, in these days, that's more like $3,000. I wasn't sure, because going off to war, it can be permanent. But when I thought of all the good that money could do my family, I couldn't say no.
$3,000. That's so much money. Did you have to keep pretending to be a boy?
Yes, ma'am. Women weren't allowed to enroll in the Army back then either. So I enlisted as Lyons Wakeman. I served in Virginia and Washington, D.C. I sent money home anytime that I possibly could. And then I was sent to Louisiana, where I had to march through hundreds of miles of disgusting swamp with no clean water or fresh food.
Ew, that's so gross.
The conditions were so bad that hundreds of people died that were marching with me. It was awful. But every time I came even close to thinking about quitting, I would think about my family and their needs.
I don't think I'd be able to do that.
Me either.
You'd be surprised at what you could do for someone you love.
My first real battle was on April 4th, 1864. We won that battle, but it took us nearly a month, and there was nothing about it pleasant. It was shortly after that battle that I got very sick, and I had to go to the hospital. I died there without anybody ever knowing that I was really a woman. I was buried under the name Private Lyons Wakeman. I showed everybody, though, even if they didn't know it at the time, that any woman, if she sets her heart and mind to it, can do what men do.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm so glad to have such a wonderfully unexpected visit.
Thank you for listening to me. I must go now, girls. I hope you do good work on your project. Goodbye. Later. Right, later.
We have a lot to think about.
I know.
What are we gonna do? This is so hard.
Well, here. Eleanor, changed what it was to be First Lady and eventually became important to the entire world.
But Dorothea raised awareness for a problem that nobody knew was a problem.
But Susan B. Anthony supported causes that give women the rights that they have to this day.
Think about Juliette. She founded an organization that changes girls' lives every single day.
Hi, girls. Have you decided who you'd like to do your project on?
Not yet.
All right, well, you need to decide soon. I have to take Lydia home in an hour.
An hour?
No way it's been that long.
We're never gonna get this done in time.
Well, we better try. Let's look at our notes and make a decision.
Well, unfortunately, the girls will not finish their project in time. And although, in my opinion, it will be the best project in their class, it will only receive a D because of its lateness. However, their futures will not suffer from that one grade. The spark will be lit, and they will both find a love of history in their lives. And they will go on to become one of the greatest archaeological duos of their lifetime. Their story just goes to show that it doesn't matter what you want to do, as long as you do your best and love what you do, you will be successful.
We've made our decision.
Well, let's hear it.
We have chosen Sarah Wakeman.
Sarah Wakeman, huh? Why did you choose her?
Because even though she wasn't really famous, she helped her family and changed her life. She didn't become important to the entire world, but she really proved equality.
And she's from Bainbridge, which is really cool.
Did I hear you girls say you chose Sarah Wakeman for your project?
Yes, Mom, you did.
Well, I'm glad, because I have some things that I think might help you.
A book about Sarah Wakeman.
What's this?
That's Sarah Wakeman's uniform. It's been passed down to our family for a long time now.
Thanks, Mom. That's a great help.
You're welcome. Now you girls get to work, or you won't even be close to finishing tonight.
She wrote and directed this play for her Gold Award for Girl Scouts. It's one of the highest awards you can get in Girl Scouting, and the fact that Leslie Tallmadge got it is just incredible and amazing, and she's put so much hard work into this. So, on behalf of the entire cast, thank you, Leslie.
I'd like to thank you all for coming, and as you leave, we'll be out in the hallway to greet you.